Hello, my name is Kathy. Growing up, I heard little family stories, often told around the dinner table or when we had guests. But those stories were only fragments, and I wanted to know who Trish and Walter really were before they became mom and dad. With their help, I've been writing about those early chapters of their lives. I began with Trish. Her father was deployed to war before she was born in 1941 in Liverpool, England. She wouldn't meet him until she was 4 years old. I hadn't realized how drastically life changed for her once he came home and how she struggled. I knew Trish had trained as a pediatric nurse at Alder Hey Hospital, but I didn't know that she had attended the entrance interview at the age of 17 on a whim just to keep a friend company. She was offered a seat in the nursing program on the spot and she accepted, defying her father and widening the rift between them. Trish later moved into general nursing, hoping it would open more career opportunities. She was in the very first general nursing class at the new Hull School of Nursing and was featured in the school's promotional photos. Her nursing career eventually took her to remote First Nations communities in British Columbia, Canada, after she responded to an ad in an English newspaper. Walter was born in British Columbia in the Okanagan region. When he was 8 years old, the family moved to a rough piece of land on Vancouver Island, and chores became the theme in his life. Walter called it the end of his childhood, but his story drifts between regret over lost freedom and pride in his family's hard work and resourcefulness. In grade 7, a teacher sparked his love of learning, and after high school, Walter trained as a teacher himself, spending 6 years in education before discovering flying, the passion that changed his path entirely. Visiting his sister in Vancouver, Walter spotted an ad in the newspaper. $20 for an introductory flying lesson. He took the lesson that afternoon, and from then on, every decision revolved around flying. Ironically, although his life centered on flying, we have only one photo of him in a plane, and this isn't it. I had to add him to this photo. Dad proudly says he's from the era before selfies. So imagine my glee when sorting through his photos, I found this self-portrait that he took. Walter warming himself over a campfire in an old trapper's cabin. While Dad's photos have been digitized and I have access to them all, Mom's are still in boxes and albums. She selects the ones she shares for this project. She describes her young self as a loner, more interested in her studies and work than in socializing. Her photos certainly do show her hard work and her commitment to her patients, yet they tell another story, too, of companionship with other nurses in the nurses' residence where she lived for several years, of nights out for concerts and theater performance, and even trips abroad on occasion. I saw a new social side to my mom as we talked about the women in these images and the antics and adventures that unfolded during her years living in the nurses' residences. Some photos might seem random, but they sparked what my brother calls a shock of memory, like this image of a crude filtration system for melting snow into water in a remote First Nations village in British Columbia, where Trish worked as a community health nurse. Her first years in Canada were rich with stories. Her first salmon barbecue, escaping death after capsizing a canoe in frigid water, and learning new cultural expectations. Leaving structured city hospitals, she became the sole health provider in increasingly remote communities. Other images show isolation, long winters in communities accessible only by air. The week's highlight was the mail plane, bringing supplies, letters, and news. And over time, its pilot became as welcome as the cargo. Through it all, we're relying on memories, and memories can be elusive. Dad once told me about flying sled dog teams for trappers. He said every dog fought for a window seat, making the boarding chaotic. He has photos of one such flight, including the one on the right, the one photo of Dad in a plane, calmly plotting his flight plan and ignoring the chaos behind him. Weeks after telling me this story, he casually mentioned another. Have I told you about the day I flew a trapper and a live trapped wolf down from the trap line? No, Dad, you haven't. The trapper tried to keep the animal contained while Dad tried to keep the plane aloft. I thought, how could anyone forget that? Yet Dad said the memory had slipped away, even when talking about similar occurrences with the sled dogs. The memory of the wolf didn't resurface until much later. Dad allows me to record our sessions, while Mom prefers I take only handwritten notes. Both options work, but the recordings allow me to capture Dad's exact words, making his chapters more personal. With Mom, there's more back and forth as I miss details in her narrative and we have to fill in gaps later. When I first began interviewing Mom, I thought we'd have enough for just a few essays. But as we talked, her story kept growing. A private person, she surprised me by agreeing to share it publicly. We began publishing chapters on Substack as serialized nonfiction, and before long, talk turned to ebooks and print editions. While writing Mom's story, Dad kept asking when we'd start his. The challenge became how to present both stories in one book without making me choose a favorite parent by placing one story first. The solution came from my stepdaughter, Petra, who suggested a tête bêche design, 2 front covers, the story meeting in the middle with shared photos. Even better, Petra is illustrating the cover, adding another family layer to the project. This is an example of a tête bêche book. Through this work, I've discovered who Trish and Walter were before they were my parents. And Trish and Walter, well, they seem to have become energized by this project, and they've learned more about each other as well. Recently, my cousin Carla visited them, and they keenly shared their stories, eager to pass them on to her and her son, bringing another generation into the family story.